The motel room smelled like old socks and burned coffee. Seth Wilder sat on the bed, flipping through their father's journal. His eyes scanned each page, looking for something, anything, that matched what they had just seen. Dane stood near the door, arms crossed, still wearing his boots. "It went up, Seth," Dane said, pointing to the blood stain on the ceiling. "Blood isn't supposed to do that." "I know," Seth replied. He turned the page and tapped a drawing with his finger. "But look at this. Dad wrote about places where gravity gets weird, places where the rules bend. He called them thin spots." Dane walked over and looked at the page. It showed a small sketch of a house with blood dripping from the ceiling. Below it, in messy handwriting, their father had written, "When the veil is thin, even the dead forget which way is up." That morning, a woman named Nora had called them. Her daughter had been hearing voices and seeing shadows in her bedroom. Then one night, she found blood on the floor, but it didn't pool. It rose. She followed the trail with her eyes and saw it sticking to the ceiling, like someone had spilled it there from above. Seth and Dane had gone to check it out. The house was small, one story, with peeling paint and a broken fence. Inside, it felt colder than outside. The girl's room was painted light blue, and the stuffed animals on the bed were all facing the wall, as if they didn't want to watch what happened next. Seth had stood under the stain, staring up. It was deep red, almost black, and shaped like a long, reaching hand. The longer he looked, the more he felt it was pointing, leading somewhere. Now back at the motel, Seth was sure they had seen a sign. "The stain is a marker," he said. "Something happened in that room. Something left behind more than just blood." Dane nodded slowly. "Then let's find out what." They drove back to the house that night. The sky was dark, and the moon was hidden by clouds. Everything looked still. Nora met them at the door, her hands shaking. "It's been worse," she whispered. "My daughter said she heard humming, like a song from a music box." "Where is she now?" Seth asked. "With her aunt. I didn't want her here anymore." Seth and Dane went into the room. This time they brought gear, black light, EMF reader, and a small digital recorder. Seth scanned the ceiling again with the black light. Words. Thin glowing lines hidden in the blood. Dane stepped closer, eyes wide. "Is that writing?" Seth nodded. "Looks like a name." He spelled it out slowly. Lucy. Dane looked at him. "That's the daughter's name." "No," Seth said, pointing to the wall. "She said her daughter's name is Emily." They looked at each other. That name didn't belong to anyone living. They searched the rest of the room. Near the window, the EMF reader beeped, fast and sharp. Seth turned on the digital recorder. "If you're here," he said, "we just want to talk." "Who are you?" Static filled the room. Then a small voice, almost too soft to hear, came through. "Upstairs." Dane looked confused. "There is no upstairs." Seth's eyes narrowed. "Not in this house, no." He opened the closet door. Nothing but hangers and an old shoebox. He knelt and felt the floor, solid. But something was off. He knocked, and the sound was hollow. Dane helped him pull up the rug. There, barely visible, was a thin crack running in a circle. A trapdoor. But instead of opening downward, it was nailed shut from below. Seth stood. "That stain isn't just a sign. It's a door." The next morning, they brought tools and pried the door open. It groaned like something waking up. Below was a dark tunnel, not a basement, but something older. The walls were stone, and the air was cold like a freezer. They climbed down slowly, flashlights sweeping the tunnel. Bloodstains covered the floor, but again, the drops pointed upward, toward the ceiling. Whatever happened here, Dane said, didn't follow the rules. Seth found more writing on the walls. Some were names. Some were prayers. Some were just scratches, like fingernails dragged across stone. They reached the end of the tunnel. A small room, round, with a strange circle drawn on the floor. In the center was an old chair, turned over. Next to it, a child's shoe. Seth picked it up. "This is where it happened." Dane looked around. "Where what happened?" Seth whispered, "Where the girl, Lucy, died." The air shifted. Their flashlights flickered. A voice echoed. "Why didn't she come back?" They turned fast. A shape stood at the edge of the room. Not fully there, but not gone either. A little girl, maybe 7 years old. Her eyes were empty, but her voice was full of sadness. "She promised," she said. "She said she'd come back for me." "Who did?" Seth asked gently. "Mommy." Dane glanced at Seth. "We need to end this." Seth knelt by the circle. "We can help you rest, Lucy. But you have to let go." She shook her head. I can't. I'm stuck. Seth took out the journal and began reading. A release ritual. Simple words. A promise. Light filled the room, soft and golden. Lucy blinked, and for a moment she smiled. Tell her I waited, she whispered. Then she was gone. The blood on the ceiling vanished. The cold lifted. The tunnel walls looked dry. Seth and Dane climbed back out. Outside, the sun had come out. Dane looked at his brother. One more lost found again. Seth nodded. Let's go find the next one. The day after the release ritual, the house felt different. Nora called to say the cold was gone, and her daughter had slept through the night. Still, Seth and Dane weren't convinced it was over. Spirits didn't always stay gone, and there were too many unanswered questions. Back at the motel, Seth opened their father's journal again. Why would Lucy's name be written in the blood? He asked. Dane shook his head. That room, those tunnels, they weren't just some accident. Something was done there. On purpose. Seth tapped the page. Look at this. Dad wrote about blood rituals that go wrong. He said sometimes the pain echoes, leaves a scar on the space itself. Dane raised his eyebrows. You're saying that place is scarred? Yeah, and maybe Lucy wasn't the first. They drove back to the house one last time, hoping to find more answers before the trail went cold. The sky was gray, and light rain made the dirt road slick. When they arrived, Nora met them with a box. These were in... Seth read over the details. No license, no records of inspection, just his name and a list of donors. They flipped to the next page. Photos, black and white, blurry. One showed the same house. Another showed a group of children standing in a circle, holding hands. One girl had a scar over her eye. Her name was written in pen underneath, Lucy. Seth swallowed hard. He didn't take them in to help them. Dane clenched his jaw. He used them. That night, they returned to the tunnel beneath the house. The trapdoor creaked open, like it didn't want to be touched. As they climbed down, the air grew colder again. Lucy's gone, Seth said, but this place still remembers. They moved slowly through the tunnel. The flashlight beam danced across the stone. This time they noticed more names. Not just Lucy's. Names carved deep, some crossed out, others circled. Seth ran his fingers over a name, May. These are the others. Dane turned sharply. There's something ahead. At the far end of the tunnel, where the circle had been, the room had changed. The chair was upright. The candle had been relit, though no flame burned. And in the center of the circle lay a diary. Old leather cover, worn and cracked. Seth picked it up and opened to the first page. Thomas J. Corwin, he read aloud. This is his journal. They sat down and began reading. Corwin had believed he could free children from what he called their earthly burdens. He wrote of rituals, of spirits, of bleeding the pain away, of leaving their marks on the ceiling so the next life would know where to begin. Dane rubbed his temples. He killed them, called it mercy. Seth looked pale, and he thought the blood rising meant he'd succeeded. They heard a sound behind them, a low hum like a music box winding up, then a whisper, more are coming. They turned fast. In the tunnel stood a line of shadows. Children, not clear, not solid, but watching. Lucy opened the way, Seth said. They want to leave too. Dane reached into his bag and pulled out a pouch of salt and a bottle of holy water. Then let's help them. They drew a new circle on the ground. Seth read from the old journal, not Corwin's words, but a counter-ritual their father had once used. One that unbinds. The air shimmered. The humming grew louder. The children began to step forward, one by one, touching the circle. As they did, they faded, their shapes turning to light. Seth kept reading. Dane guarded the doorway. At last, only one child remained. A girl with braids and no shoes. She looked at Seth. Did she ever come back? She asked. Seth didn't lie. No, but you're not alone now. She smiled. Okay. And she vanished. The circle dimmed. The room felt warm. Dane exhaled. We ended it. Seth stood slowly. We gave them peace. And outside, for the first time, the sky was clear. The next morning, Seth sat on the hood of their car, staring at the roof of the old house. We missed something, he said quietly. We thought it ended with Lucy, with Corwin. But what if the real danger didn't leave? Dane, sipping stale motel coffee, nodded slowly. Something still feels off. That last girl, the one who asked if she came back. It wasn't just sadness in her voice. It was fear. Seth stood and grabbed the old journal. Corwin said the blood going up meant something. That the next life would know where to begin. What if this whole thing wasn't about ending pain? What if he was starting something? They headed back to the house, the sky darkening as they arrived. Clouds moved unnaturally fast, swirling like water in a drain. Inside, Nora was gone, visiting her sister in the next town. Seth and Dane didn't need distractions. The floorboards creaked under their boots as they crossed the living room. They both looked up at the same time. That's when they saw it. A shape on the ceiling. Dark, wide, and stretching from one end of the hallway to the other. Not just a stain. Not just water damage. A symbol. Lines drawn in something red and faintly shimmering. Blood, Dane said. It's dried now. But this is where it ended, or began. Seth narrowed his eyes. The blood that dripped upward. It made this. From the children. From their rituals. This is the key. They grabbed a ladder and climbed to inspect it. As they got closer, the red marks pulsed faintly. There's writing here, Seth said. But it's not English. Not Latin either. Dane handed over their father's notes. Seth compared the markings. Dad saw this before. Just once. He called it reverse binding. A spell designed to call a soul back after death. Dane's jaw tightened. So Corwin wasn't freeing them. He was keeping them. Or trying to bring something through them, Seth whispered. Suddenly, a gust of wind burst through the house, slamming doors and extinguishing lights. The ceiling symbol glowed like fire. Seth jumped down. Something's active again. They ran to the tunnel entrance. It was wide open. Inside, the shadows had returned. The tunnel walls were crawling with movement, not insects, not rats. But shadowy fingers climbing upward. Toward the ceiling. It's coming through, Seth said. Whatever Corwin called, it's not done. They lit fresh candles and poured a ring of salt. Seth flipped the journal open. This isn't just about letting spirits go, he said. This is a lock. And someone's trying to break it open from the other side. They followed the shadow trail through the tunnel and up a hidden staircase they hadn't noticed before. It led to the attic. Inside, the room was cold, filled with dust and broken furniture. But in the middle stood a single chair, and above it, the ceiling symbol, perfectly mirrored. It's not a ceiling, Dane muttered. It's a door. Suddenly, a child's voice rang out, You shouldn't be here. They turned. A girl stood at the far end of the room, face half hidden by her hair. I'm not supposed to talk to you, she said. He'll hear. Seth stepped forward. Who is he? The girl looked up. He's what came after. Corwin only opened the gate. The air vibrated. The ceiling symbol bled light. And then, from the center of it, something began to lower. A shape, black as night, faceless, stretching like smoke. We need to seal it now, Seth shouted. They poured salt, drew new runes, and began the unbinding. The thing above shrieked, but no sound came. Only pressure, like gravity reversing. The room bent. Dane anchored Seth by the waist while Seth shouted the words from their father's counter-ritual. The shape twisted, recoiled, tried to fall but couldn't. And then it scattered. The room was silent again. The girl was gone. The light faded from the ceiling. And for the first time in years, the attic felt empty. Seth looked at Dane. We're not done. But we closed this door. Dane nodded, and kept whatever that was out. Back at the motel, Seth sat with their father's journal open, tracing the strange red markings they'd seen on the ceiling. He drew the symbol on a napkin, over and over, like he was trying to understand it through muscle memory. We've seen this before, Seth muttered. Back in Missouri, that farmhouse case. Remember? Dane looked up from cleaning one of their knives. Yeah, there was a girl who painted those shapes in her sleep. Woke up screaming every night. Then one day, she stopped. She didn't stop, Seth said. She disappeared. That memory tightened the room. Dane slowly put the knife down. Seth flipped through the journal. Dad said these symbols act like signals. Beacons. But only when completed. That ceiling symbol, it was whole. So it was sending out a signal, Dane said. But to who? Or to what? That night, they returned to the house. The clouds overhead churned in place, like something was stirring them. As soon as they entered, Seth felt it, thick air, like pressure right before a thunderstorm. They checked the ceiling again. Still there. Still glowing faintly. Seth looked around the attic carefully. He pressed along the floor, tapping until he found a hollow sound. "There's something beneath," he said. They pried open the wooden floorboards and discovered a narrow hole. A hidden stairway led even deeper underground. Dane clicked on a flashlight, because tunnels weren't creepy enough. They descended slowly. The air grew colder with every step. The walls here were older, made of rough stone. Strange markings lined the walls, scratches, symbols, some resembling claws. At the bottom, they entered a circular chamber. Old wooden beams supported the structure. In the center sat a round table, covered in dust and bones. Human bones. Dane flinched. "These are children's bones." Seth nodded grimly. "I think this was where Corwin did the binding rituals. Not the attic. This is the true ritual room." On the far wall was another symbol, larger than the one upstairs, carved into the stone itself. It pulsed with faint red light. Suddenly, a cold wind blew through the chamber, though there were no windows. Then a voice, "You found it." They spun around. The little girl from before stood in the corner. Her hair fell like a curtain over her eyes. "You're not supposed to be here," she said again. Dane took a step forward. "Who are you really?" She pointed to the wall. "He made us watch. When we tried to run, he made us stay." Seth's voice softened. "Who is he?" She shivered. "Corwin tried to reach him, but someone else answered." Suddenly, the wall's symbol flared bright red. A screech echoed through the chamber. The air turned electric. The symbol cracked down the middle, like something inside was trying to claw its way out. Seth opened the journal. "We need to finish what Corwin started, but close the door this time." They spread salt in a circle around the symbol. Dane read from the journal, while Seth copied a counterrune onto the wall. A tremor shook the room. The light from the symbol began to flicker. Then a shape emerged, tall, shadowy, undefined, like smoke mixed with flesh. It reached toward them, but stopped at the salt. Seth's hands trembled as he shouted the final words. The girl screamed. The shadow recoiled. The symbol hissed, then shattered like glass. A burst of wind threw them back against the walls. Silence. The light vanished. The chamber darkened, only their flashlights remained. The girl was gone. Dane looked around. "Did we do it?" Seth stood, wiping dust from his face. "I think we shut it. Whatever door Corwin opened, it's closed now." Dane gave a small nod. "Let's get out before it opens again." They climbed the stairs, sealing the hole behind them. As they left the house, the clouds finally broke. For the first time in days, stars appeared above them. But neither Seth nor Dane looked up. They both knew that somewhere, something else was waiting. They drove in silence for a long time. The dirt road behind the house stretched into the dark like a snake. Seth's hands gripped the steering wheel too tightly. Dane sat beside him, staring at the empty road, jaw clenched. "You felt it too, right?" Seth finally asked. Dane nodded. "Yeah, that thing wasn't just a spirit. It was something older. Something wrong." Seth looked in the rear-view mirror, then back at the road. The journal mentioned something about failed ascension rituals. If Corwin didn't bind the spirit right, he might have created something new, something twisted. Dane exhaled hard. And now it's stuck in that place, unless someone opens that door again. They returned to the library the next morning, hoping to find more about the man named Corwin. The librarian, a thin woman with sharp glasses, led them to the local history section. Seth scanned the books quickly until he found a thin black binder with Dunridge folklore typed on the front. Inside, he found it Corwin Mallory. Not a priest, not a doctor, but a performer, a stage magician in the 1880s. Dane raised an eyebrow. "You're telling me a magician caused all this?" Seth turned the page. Not just any magician. He specialized in illusions of death, levitation, spirit communication. But here's the twist, he believed in it. Said the stage was just practice for the real thing. He wanted to do it for real. Yeah, he went missing in 1894. Witnesses claimed he was experimenting with soul separation. Some said he vanished in front of a crowd. Dane leaned closer. So he wasn't summoning something. He was trying to leave his body. Seth tapped the margin, and if he failed, he could have trapped his soul. Or worse, split it. They left the library with a copy of Corwin's biography. Seth flipped through it again while Dane drove. A photo showed Corwin mid-performance, arms raised above a circle of candles. He called to the ascension spiral, Seth read. His final act. No one ever figured out how he did it. Dane scoffed, because it didn't end with applause. That night, they returned to the house one last time. Seth stood in the center of the attic, the spot where the first symbol appeared. Whatever was down there, it's not gone, he said. Just sealed. But it's feeding on the memory of what Corwin did. We have to erase that memory. Dane raised an eyebrow. How do you erase a memory that strong? Seth knelt and pulled chalk from his bag. We overwrite it with a new ritual. They recreated the circle, same dimensions, same direction, but this time they drew symbols of closure and rest. Seth murmured the lines from the journal, then from his own notes. In the air above them, the dust started to rise. The wind blew, but the windows didn't open. A faint hum echoed from the walls. Seth didn't stop. He kept reading. Spirit unmade by broken will, return to silence, still and still. The symbol on the ceiling pulsed once. Then the floor beneath them rippled. Not moved, rippled like water. A low groan came from beneath. Then the girl appeared again. But this time, she didn't look lost. Her eyes met Seth's. You're fixing it. He nodded. Trying. She looked around. He still remembers. Even after all this time. Seth hesitated. Corwin. She nodded. He doesn't know who he is anymore, but he remembers the pain. The walls shook slightly. Seth closed his eyes and spoke the final words. The light from the ceiling went out. The room fell quiet. Not just silent quiet. The kind that settles after something has left. The girl gave one last smile. Then vanished. Dane exhaled. Is that it? Seth looked around. We'll know in the morning. They sealed the attic and left the house. At dawn, the air over the house felt lighter. The animals in the woods moved again. Birds returned to the trees. Dane sipped his coffee on the hood of the Impala. You think she's really gone? Seth shrugged. Maybe, but I think Corwin finally let go. They didn't say anything else. Sometimes silence is enough.